the Mindset Athlete Podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. I'm a two-time Paralympian and owner of James Robert Fitness, which is an online training, nutrition, and mindset coaching business. First of all, I'd like to thank Lauren Williams for suggesting this quote to the show. An athlete is a mindset. It's how you prepare, think, and execute. Not because of some elite status or physical stature. Anybody can be an athlete. By Chris Harth. And each week on the Mindset Athlete, we like to bring you inspirational athletes, a message, or experts talking about human optimization to teach you how to change your perception of your mindset and become 1% better. And on today's show, I've got Matt Zinman. And on today's show, I've got Thane Marcus Ringler. Thane is a former professional golfer turned speaker, writer, and development coach living in Denver, Colorado with his wife, Ivan. In his current work, Thane's mission is to help others live and work better. He is passionate about speaking to the journey from the journey and is striving to empower this generation to take ownership of their lives and never settle for less than they are capable of. Thane is also the host of the Up and Comers Show, a podcast all about the process of becoming and living with intentionality while sharing stories from other inspiring up and comers along the way. So welcome onto the show, Thane.
Thanks for having me, James. That's a tough word, intentionality. I've said it enough to where it flows, but man, it can get choppy. So I hear you on that.
Is it a real word though?
It is, yeah. So intentionality, it's doing something with intention is really what it means, and intention itself is a purpose or a reason why behind what we do. So living with intentionality means that we are living with infusing a purpose or a reason why behind what we're doing on a daily, momentary basis, which takes effort and intention. Ultimately, it's a discipline, I think.
But what separates it from intention then? That's more
intentionality. Yeah. So it's like I guess I don't know if I could describe that well, but intentionality is a different form of the word, meaning it's, I guess I'm not great on grammar here, but I'm guessing it's an adjective, versus intention itself being, more of a verb or a noun. I'm not sure. It's a different form of the word to where it's a different part of the sentence structure. And this is past my pay grade in English here.
We'll leave it up to the grammar police then. Obviously, I've gone away, and you and I have discussed probably at length over multiple email conversations. And I went away and looked at your Instagram feed, and I'm very much in awe of the hope that you're trying to bring to the world. So talk to me about obviously the journey from going from being a professional golfer, because people are going to put you on a pedestal of the likes of, Tiger Woods and people have lots and lots of wealth, to wanting to get into speaking and ultimately writing books.
Yeah, I think just to give people a little context too on my heart in that, I love this quote by Bill Simon, who said, "I was born on third base and thought I hit a triple." And really that's to say that, I was given more opportunities that I can't take credit for than other people were. And so my whole goal in my life has been to be responsible and take ownership for what I've been given and do the best that I can with that. So I can only take half credit, if that, to a lot of those things. And with golf, being a professional golfer, like any endeavor at a high level, as you know, with athletics, it's not as glamorous, it's not as sexy, it's not as great as everyone imagines it to be. It's very challenging, difficult, and usually you experience way more failure than you do success, especially in a golf tournament. Most golf tournaments have upwards of 120 to 150 guys playing in it. And in that, 2/3 of the field doesn't make the cut, meaning they don't play the weekend and they don't get a paycheck. And so, you're looking at 80 guys going home after 2 days, and maybe 50 to 60 guys playing the weekend. And then, there's only one winner. The rest are, behind that. So, I think any endeavor like that entails a lot of failing. And really, my career itself was a quote unquote failure in that I didn't reach the PGA Tour. I didn't get the card. I didn't get to the level that I really wanted to. I had about 4 years where I played. In the last year and a half, I had a muscle strain that repeated about 5 times every year and a half. And that was a really frustrating, difficult journey of discovering the body, trying to solve the problem of the body. And through that, God really redirected a lot of my passions and intention and purpose in life to where I thought I could be more effective outside the world of golf than within it. I wasn't a golf nerd by any means. I wasn't a golf fanatic. I was a competitor. I loved competing and I loved the sport of golf. And that was the main outlet for my competition. But when it came to what I really felt called to in the world, I felt that I had instilled these habits, these disciplines, these mindsets into myself in pursuing this endeavor in this sport that I thought could really be beneficial to other people in their lives, just as much as it had been really beneficial to me in my life. And so that really kind of kicked off the journey of entrepreneurship post athletics. And by no means is it a clean, straight path. It's a wandering, meandering road that, again, entails a lot of failures, learning what not to do before you learn what to do. So that's really been a big part of my story so far and will continue to be, hopefully, my entire life.
Why do you think people have these presumptions and this is ultimately why I asked you that question initially. Why do people have this kind of rose-tinted observation of golf?
I think it's true of anything that we see the pinnacle of, yet we only see one fraction, a percentage of what that actually entails. So it doesn't really matter what sport it is, but if we focus on golf, some people may connect more with basketball. But if you look at basketball and you see right now when we're recording this, the NBA finals are going on. And if you watch these guys in the NBA finals, you're like, I want to do that one day. This is so inspiring. They make it look so easy. They're so amazing at what they do, but they don't realize that 99% of what it took to get there, we have zero perspective or idea on. And that 1% that we think we know isn't exactly what we know that it took to get them, all the practice, all the hours, all the travel, all the crazy schedules, all of the dedication and discipline, all the things that they had to say no to in order to say yes to that pursuit. Same is true in golf. When you look at, when you watch golf on a Sunday, you're seeing the final round and you're seeing the best players playing their best. So what you don't realize is that, again, on Sunday, there's a lot of guys who are playing bad that aren't even ever being seen on TV because they just are having a bad day and they aren't near the leaderboard. And so you don't see the experience of those guys. You don't see the experience of the guys who missed the cut that aren't even playing anymore. And you don't realize that, Monday morning or Sunday night, after the whole thing's done, they're hopping on a plane, they're traveling to the next one, they're waking up on Monday, they have 3 or 4 days to practice and prepare to get ready for the next tournament, and they're grinding. They're out there working on their game. They're trying to fix things. And they're not at home or in their community or with their family. And there's exceptions to all of that, but the main point is that it's a long, grueling road to get there. And even when you're there at the top, it's extremely hard to stay there, and it takes a ton of work. The 10,000 hour rule that everyone likes to claim that Malcolm Gladwell kind of made famous is just the simple idea that the quantity of practice and effort it takes to get to that level is insurmountable in a lot of ways. It takes a ton, but equally true to that, it takes a ton to stay there. You don't just get to the top of the mountain and coast. You have to keep climbing to maintain that skill level. And so I think, like anything, whenever we see pictures of success, we all inwardly long for that. We're like, man, I want to do that. I want to be there. I want to be in that element. At least for me, whenever I watch any sports or any performance, I'm like, it inspires me and I want to do that. And a lot of times our naivete says, if only I could just practice a little bit and I could get there. And it's never that simple. So I think for us all to just, be more realistic in the amount of time and effort it takes to get there, it's helpful for us to see that the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the fence. It's greener where we water it. So we kind of need to water where we're at if we want our grass to be green too.
I feel like this quote that I've seen from a former NFL player who's gone into to coaching as well. He put it as, the grass is greener always on the other side. That grass is artificial turf.
Oh, that's really good. I'm going to use that one.
But how do you stay hopeful when obviously you've got all those insurmountable failures or roadblocks in your way to ascertain even reaching the PGA Tour, which you obviously said you didn't. That was probably the aspiration growing up, to make the tour. How do you stay hopeful when all those things kind of fall by the wayside?
Totally. I think understanding there's the reason why I just recently wrote a book on hope is because I think hope is something that's always readily available and present for all of us if we just would look for it, if we would reframe our perspective to find it. One of the most hopeful things is the reality that failure isn't fatal and failure isn't final. The thing that we think is a failure is just a stepping stone to success. It's what helps us get to the place we want to be. And we look at it as this obstacle or this dead end or this thing that dooms us. It spells doom for us a lot of times because we attach our identity to what we do instead of who we are. But in reframing that and seeing that, look, everyone is on a journey, and the fact that we're moving forward on this journey entails having obstacles and hurdles and setbacks and things that are going to be hard to overcome. And so for me, it's to get it more personal in the journey of golf. For me, I had the talent and skill to do. I had a lot of natural ability, but what held me back was my mind, was the mental component. And I experienced a lot of dead ends in my mind of the way I thought about things, but each process of that was a progression to where I got to deeper and deeper levels of self-awareness, to where I could start learning more of how my mind operated, to where it started out as when I first turned professional, I was looking to every other player for their blueprint for success, saying, what are they doing and how can I copy or mimic it so I can be successful too? When in reality, I need to be looking at myself and saying, how do I best operate? How do I best perform? And what are the things that I need to maximize my performance? And so it took me 6 months plus to really realize that I'm banging my head against the wall here by just trying to copy others. And I need to start learning myself better so that I can maximize and optimize myself. And so that was like the first progression of failure, in that sense of saying, okay, I'm keeping failing. But that failure was instructing me of what I was doing wrong. It just took me at the pausing and figuring out, what is this within my mind, the way I'm thinking about this, the way I'm approaching it, that isn't working. And then I got to change and iterate and start working on, okay, how do I develop my system for success? And then again, this is a never ending process. And that I think we get, the thing where we get wrong is thinking that there is a point of arrival, in that once we get to a certain point, we've arrived and we can just coast or stop learning or don't have to put in the work anymore. And by reframing and understanding that point never happens, that we always have to put in the work and then we're always going to have to keep learning, to keep growing. There's always a chance for that. That gives us hope by saying, oh, I'm not playing for a destination. I'm playing for the process of getting there that will continue. And by enjoying that process, then I can find hope in the process by saying that the point isn't the destination. The point is the journey. And that's where the real fruit comes from. So that's just one of the perspectives that I found, and I think there's a lot of these that we can find in our lives that fill us with hope. And hope is a thing that really gives us that drive, that energy to keep going, even when it's dire, even when it's hard, even when we don't feel, especially when we don't feel like it.
Do you think having that kind of mindset keeps you grounded and ultimately it keeps you that inner peace and that inner sense of keeping that flame burning inside you? Because obviously what you alluded to is a lot of people, when they think about arriving at a journey, they're using a lot of external motivators, be it social media, comparing themselves to other people. I must take aspects of other people or other players, if we use the sporting context, to be able to sculpt my game around, or would you use the NBA finals, take elements of LeBron James, AD, Jimmy Butler, and then thus either build this juggernaut or mold it in a way that suits our style of play. But I like what you echoed there of, well, that you kind of lose sight of what's more important and this is probably, I won't generalize, I'll use maybe because I did it, is you lose sight of the process and you thus probably get away from what was passion at the very instances at the very beginning as a kid, and it becomes a job, because sport becomes a job. And obviously most people, when they get there, they either hate it or want to quit. And I think what you echoed there of looking internally and trying to find what actually drives you and, keeps that engine turning over, or to use an anecdote of, the stove cooking, I think is ultimately is hope and reinventing yourself time after time, because there's no that's always going to be difficult to say, innate ways in which you can recreate yourself, because as human beings, we do that daily.
That's a really good word, and I want to also say that with that, no single person is the center of the universe. So, by us putting this achievement of like winning the NBA finals as what is the ultimate purpose of my life, it puts ourselves at the center of the universe. Now, we need to have goals. We need to have things we push for. We need to have motivators that drive us that are external. Those are useful things. Those aren't bad. It's just that when we start becoming the most important person in the universe and the world revolves around us, then we're going to end up at a place that we never expected. We're going to end up at what we thought we wanted, and it's going to be the last thing we wanted, because we're going to lack the fulfillment that we expected that thing to bring. And that's the whole point of like what you just mentioned with understanding the journey, is it connects us to each other and says, look, I'm pursuing this not just for myself, but also to inspire others, but also to further the game, but also to have a voice to speak into things that I really care about. You can fill in the blank with a lot, but all those speak to a greater purpose beyond just myself. And I think that there's always hope when we realize that we're a part of a collective. We're a part of the greater humanity, and that we're not above or below our fellow humans. We're on the same playing field. And because of that, we get to use our goals and our motivations and our tasks to not only further our own desires or careers or goals, but also impact others in the world for good. And that's where that hope can be then limitless. And a lot of times we're always hope filled, because there's always potential to do that.
I think, I don't know if Disney meant to do this, but, and when you were talking, it come to mind, it's not a quote, but one of the sayings in, Cool Runnings, the films, peace be the journey, whatever that means. It might mean something to the Jamaicans, and obviously let me know if it actually means anything. Ultimately, there's a lot of anecdotes in it's not technically a true story, because I spoke to one of the guys who were in the Jamaican team. Was that their story they need to make the remake, because I think it had more impact on people, because the amount of failures that they went through just to get on the start line was incredible. And I think obviously films use dramatization and storytelling to infatuate stories to make them be a little bit more empowering. The other one is the movie Rudy and ultimately some of those things weren't true, but obviously they take film licensing to be able to kind of blow things out a little bit bit out of proportion, but I kind of blow smoke on it. But I think, so we don't go off too much of a tangent, I think it's remembering the peace be the journey. How I would interpret it is ultimately you enjoy the journey.
It is, yeah, and when you can reframe and reshape our perspective to where it's enjoying the journey, then every day is an awesome opportunity, because every day is a part of the journey. And when we realize that progress doesn't happen in giant leaps, but in baby steps, then we can really hone in on, oh, okay, I'm not trying to jump to the 10th step today. I'm just trying to take the next step. And then the following day, I'm going to take the next step. And, in 10 days, I'll reach that 10th step. And that's actually better for me than if I was just to jump to the 10th step. Because if we just jump, we try to take a shortcut or cheat the system or get to a place that we haven't necessarily earned or achieved, then we're not going to be ready to be at that place anyways. The process is what prepares us for that 10th step anyways. So if we skip the process, then we're going to end up at the 10th step, and it'll be even more of a colossal failure than it was in the first place, because we didn't develop our way into that position. And so I think this whole idea that progress happens in baby steps, and that every day we have an ability to take the next step, it frees us up to not have to figure out. I think a lot of times we put so much pressure on ourselves that I need to figure out what that big 10th step place is and make sure that that's perfect and exactly what I want before I start moving. But we really figure out that place by moving. So we kind of have it flip-flopped. We need to just take that step that's in front of us, whatever that next action item or that next goal or the next thing that we know we need to do, but we're slacking on because we haven't figured out the 10th step. Well, by taking that next step, we will better figure out the 10th step, and it'll always be different than what we expect.
I think what ultimately with that thing is people have a choice. Do you seek perfectionism, or do you seek procrastination? One in themselves is exactly the same thing. Ultimately, you're standing still. So ultimately, for athletes, you may deem to reach for perfectionism, but if your goal deviates from that, okay, I'm going a different way. It's all stems from performance base. Okay, we're going to go a different way. Whereas I think maybe with the general populace, which I know some people will listen to this, that's also a choice. It's okay to go on a different path. It's if it's meant to be, it's okay to turn left. If you thought you were going to turn right, it's okay. Don't sit there and ponder, let the traffic build up behind you, and you're going to have those people beeping their horns. It's okay to turn left. Take that decision, pull that trigger. Don't be that person, or aim. I need to hit the target, shoot, and then see what happens, and then look at the consequences there and after. Then you've made a decision, and ultimately go back to your teenage years of taking the consequences of your actions and then acting accordingly. But I think if you just sit there and wait, obviously the world's not gonna wait for you to make a decision. It's gonna pass you by, and you'll be still standing still and kind of pondering what happened. Why is everybody so much further ahead than I am? It's because you've not made a decision.
Yeah, Millard Fuller has one of my favorite quotes. He says, it's a lot easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than to think your way into a new way of acting. And we learn by doing, not by thinking. Thinking can be helpful in informing what we're doing, but we learn by experience. There's another quote, I think Whitney Hurd said, the most expensive currency in the world is experience. And it's the thing that really instructs us. It's the thing that really makes us believe in these words that we're saying. What we say here on the podcast, when you hear it, it's a cool thing to put in the mind, to remember, to think about, but it doesn't really become real, or we don't really believe it until we start acting on it, until we actually have experience that informs what we're saying, or that what we're thinking, or that what we're believing is ultimately fueled by our experience.
Well, it's execution at the end of the day. It's, I've spoke to countless Donny Boven said to me, and he was calling, even though he was the guest, he was talking directly to me in terms of, for every athlete, you're comfortable in that pool that is athleticism. Once you step out of it and go into, okay, we'll use entrepreneurship because you and I are both in it, or business, we think that some of those tangibles are not, you can't take over into the other, but we can do. It's just that certain aspects of your character traits are socially not acceptable. It's not that they're bad. It's society doesn't want them to use, be it, competition is deemed as bad. I would argue that's more likely to be, the problem is comparison. You comparing to, I don't know, somebody off reality television. I want to aspire to have what they have. Okay. You want to be front and center in front of the television. Okay. That's nice. It's at surface level. I don't particularly want a camera following me around 24/7, and you can't be able to say what you want. And ultimately with a TV program, they're going to cut bits out to suit themselves. So they're going to change the narrative to suit the means to be able to sell a product. So, be it for example's sake, Jersey Shore is very good at take a snippet here. That is the prologue to the program. So you want to tune in because I want to see a bus. I want to see a little bit of, domestic gone wrong almost, because they almost go to blows almost on every episode for every series. But people like that because it either makes them feel better about themselves in one sentence, or I can kind of watch this program and really forget about my problems, because it's so easy to be able to just kick back and relax and take it all in. It doesn't take a lot of thinking to be able to take those programs in.
Yep. And I think that's one of the things that we need to be cautious of, all of us, myself, yourself, everyone listening, in our modern society, is how much we are consuming. How much are we consuming or being fed versus striving to learn through experience or through the hard process of learning. Learning is not easy. Consuming is really easy. There's a big difference. And so when we're consuming, we're being fed narratives, we're being fed lifestyles, we're being fed ideas that we're not even aware of, and they're implanting in our subconscious, versus when we're learning, we're consciously making effort to make new pathways within our brain. And again, learning is way more valuable than consuming. It's not saying that all consumption is bad, but you have to be conscious of what you're consuming for it to be helpful a lot of times, or else it won't be dictated by us. And what you're speaking to, even with shows or what we're watching, it's easy. I like to talk about, as humans, we default to the path of least resistance. That's our default setting. So with the rivers going downstream, we're going to be going with it, and that's our default. To go upstream, it takes effort and intention, which is ultimately discipline. And that means we make a choice. I'm going to go upstream. Now I have to put effort in to start going upstream. And really, we're going to be benefited so much more by going upstream than by just going downstream and floating or coasting through life, because as the law of entropy is, it's, if you're coasting or floating, you're going down, you're actually decaying, you're going the opposite way you want to go. And so we really have to live lives of discipline. And when what we're consuming is getting more and more addicting in it, the technology companies, these TV companies, all of them are really good at addicting us to that platform, to that network, to that whatever it is, so that, like you said, they can make more money. That's the bottom line. There's a business behind these platforms and behind these products that most of the time we're not aware of. And I think The Social Dilemma is a documentary that does a good job of breaking that down, just to give people a better idea of kind of behind the scenes on some of these platforms. And it's not to, again, say that if you use them, they are bad. It's just to say that we need to have intention. We need to have consciousness behind what we're doing so that we can determine whether that's what we want or not. Because a lot of times we aren't determining it for ourselves.
Well, what one of my clients brought to me to the table about that, the consumerism. He talked of it as, that what two companies or two industries use users as they're ultimately they're selling to: the tech industry and the drug industry. So I think people need to take a conscious think of what I've just said and what you've echoed and think, well, are you a user of social media in a negative way? Because ultimately, nobody wants to have the negative connotations of a junkie or a drug pusher associated themselves when it comes to something that they're consuming. And people, through no fault of their own, can be led astray. The other is probably when it comes to nutrition. Most people are led astray by advertisement or commercials or certain, celebrities and endorsements. It's like, well, okay, if this person deems that they support this product, I must follow it's like, well, this is where people need to take a reality check. Do they really need to take this product, or is it an endorsement deal and thus they would never touch it with a barge pole?
Big difference, like you said. And, I think I actually wrote a blog post a year or two ago, I think, called "There Are No Free Lunches," and the whole point is like everything has a cost. Every single thing has a cost, and if you're not paying in dollars, you're paying in something else. And so, like, if you look at social media platforms, why are they free? Because you're paying in data and advertisements. Like, they are selling you things that you're not even aware of a lot of times. And so those are costs. Those are real costs that we're paying. We're just not as aware of it as a dollar that we pay. Similarly, if we pay $1 for a bag of potato chips, the cost of eating those is going to have a toll on our body that isn't as helpful as paying $5 for a chicken breast. I don't know, like you can play it however you want, but this idea that everything has a cost helps us understand that there are no free lunches in life, and that, like you said earlier, by not doing anything, there's a cost to that, right? Just as much as by doing something, there's a cost of maybe having it be a failure, maybe messing up, or maybe picking the wrong path or having to change paths. There's a cost in that sense, and it takes effort. But by not doing something, there's a cost of what we missed out on if we did something, or of not actually making any progress at all, whether or not it be in the right direction. So I think understanding that everything has a cost is really, and we have to remind ourselves of that daily. I'm by no means immune to this. I have to tell myself this a lot. It's preaching it to myself so I can remember, because I'm a human just like everyone else. And if I default, I'm going to take that path of least resistance.
I think it's only human nature. Like you say, we're all human beings, irrespective of you being, well, you're successful because you've been able to use a platform from your sport. I'm the same. Other people might deem it unsuccessful. I won't say failure because I won't go to that far, to that extreme. But it's a difference of opinion, and also different in perspective. As, okay, you might, for whatever reason, want to belittle my achievements to make yourself feel a little bit better about yourself. That anybody with a right mind, who's very, very confident about themselves, you're not taking me down to your level. If you want to stay in the gutter, that's fine. And it's the same with, trolling on whatever social media platform it is. It's most of those individuals wouldn't have the guts or the balls to be able to say it to somebody's face, but because they feel a keyboard warrior-esque bravado about themselves, be it male or female, or I can write whatever I want, and there's no consequences. Whereas, well, there's a consequence. There's another human being on the other end of that comment that's got to be able to, well, the ones that say they strive for, like I can't remember which. So I think it's Gary Vee said, I love seeing these things because I know I'm doing something right. But you think of how many people, further down the totem pole would take that as gospel. Okay, that person is saying whatever they want to me. Now I'm going to second guess myself and say, well, are they right? Have they got a little bit of substance about, and should I read into it a little bit more? Ultimately, it depends on what level of the totem pole are. If you're further down, okay, I'm going to start believing that because there must be some truth because you haven't got the conviction yet. And I say that massively because it's not something that anybody's born with, the conviction of confidence. And I was reading a chapter from Brendan Bouchard about, the 3 C's to confidence is congruence. See if I can remember what the other 2 are. Connection and competence. There's nothing to do with confidence in those 3 things. And ultimately, the connection is learning because you have a conversation like you or I have done and we're learning from each other. It widens your perspective to different ways of thinking.
Definitely, and I definitely relate to some of what you just said too, in that, I remember when I received one of my first, not hate comments, but, I guess kind of mean virtual comments online of a blog post I had done. And, it hurt. It affected me. It was hard to deal with, right? Because then you're like, wow, is that true? Who is this person? What do you think? What do they think of me? Am I doing something wrong? All these thoughts it's very human, right? And the more that we get those, the more that we're able to process those better. Like Gary Vee, for example.
Did you go into, and sorry to interrupt you, Thane, did you go to, this is Sparta moment then?
Yeah, I went ape on him. No, it's one of those things, like, I did have to talk to someone else about it. I had to get look, this happened, that's just kind of weird, right? To get more confirmation. And I think this idea, today, with technology and the internet, we can have, and we're supposed to have opinions about everything, which just isn't realistic. And we want to make comments on things that we're 5th or 10 steps removed from. So we don't really have good data or actual experience to know an opinion either way. But this idea that while all voices are created equal, not all voices should be given equal footing in your life. And so this is discernment. This is discernment 101. Like, if someone doesn't know me personally and doesn't see my life or my actions or my character or who I am, what they say about me virtually, I'm not going to really take that much notice of, because I don't think that's helpful. I just don't. They don't know me. I don't know them. And likewise, like, if someone is making a lot of hurtful or hateful comments online, we all hurt others out of our own hurt. And so there's something that they've been hurt by and that they have gone through that's hard and sucky and painful. And I feel for them. Like, that's hard. If I had gone through that, maybe I'd be in that same place. And so just recognizing that we all have hurt and pain that we're operating out of, and that's how we end up hurting others most of the time, can help us have more empathy for that. But this idea of discernment is, like you just said, is really huge, and knowing what voices we listen to and what we don't.
So how do we stay hopeful in, obviously, 2020 and going forward? Because we're only 3 months removed from being next year now.
Such a crazy time. I am really actually hopeful about where we're at, meaning, and the reason why I say that is, anytime there's something as chaotic and challenging as things like COVID, and then in America, like the political space we find ourselves in. I think those two things, they challenge us, and through challenge, we grow. And I think that if we zoom in from the external image of news outlets, social media, and the narratives that are spun on both sides, we can better see that on the ground level in daily life, I've actually found this time to be more unifying than separating. Believe it or not, like I think people on the daily life in human interactions, not virtually, but in daily life, are doing a better job of trying to care for each other, of trying to respect each other. And, you know, this thing like masks, there's a whole controversy over wearing masks with COVID. At the end of the day, wearing masks, the simplest thing about them is being respectful. It's being respectful for others. Whether you believe in them or not, by wearing them, you are respecting other people. And respecting their health by trying to prevent the spread of something that we don't fully know about yet, you know, something like that. And so I think by this challenge and by this increasing division, we have an opportunity to better see each other as humans and to grow in unity by saying, look, I love how my pastor recently put it too. He said, you know, unity is only possible through difference. If you don't have difference, there's no unity. That's uniformity. That's a big difference. And there is no two people on this earth that are uniform. Every single person is unique and different. And that's a blessing. That's a beautiful thing. And through that, we get to pursue unity. And we need each other. Like my giftings or my unique experience isn't in competition to yours. It's in complementary. It's complement to yours, right? It's yours and mine combined fill two pieces of the puzzle, not just competing pieces, right? And I think competition is good, but it's also understanding that we need each other. We need that competition that's healthy, but knowing that every single person's different and provides a unique aspect that can help the other. It helps us be more unified in healthy competition even. And so I think there's a lot of beautiful things that can come from this, even though it's a really challenging, I don't want to undermine the challenge that people have faced in all regards. Everybody has been affected by this to some degree. And I think that's also what's hopeful is that this isn't a singular thing. We're all experiencing it in different ways, which hopefully can lead to more empathy, and relatability to each other. Because, you know, I think about how I've grown as a man and as a person throughout my life. I've always grown the most in the hardest times. It's true. Like the things that have shaped me the most have been the hardest experiences of my life. And they've made me who I am today. And so I think going through this year for all of us is going to be massively shaping, and I think in a great way, if we individually commit to that. And it is an individual journey in that too.
I think I echo what you say, because ultimately people have a choice. It's uniformity. If people haven't seen the movie, you know, Viva Vendetta, all the same. You know, people talk a good game of 2020 has been very much like the book 1984 or Animal Farm. And this is obviously 20 years ago. I read that in high school, but ultimately these are extremes. These are Viva Vendetta is probably like a modern take on 1984, but you know, you've got all your scaremongers or, you know, mythbusters that saying, well, it's all a hoax to get people under the thumb. It's like, well, worldwide, I don't think so. Maybe when it was a few countries here and there, you could spin that, but you know, people are gonna be in their own bubbles, their own little fantasy lands. And I know you got some of them people in the US. There's probably some. I know there's definitely people in the UK because it went viral on Twitter a couple of weeks ago of people kind of saying we will not be put into lockdown again. But that's the disrespect for other human beings, like you said, because ultimately, well, until it affects somebody close to you, you won't change the rhetoric then, which is, I think, is a bit barbaric.
Mm-hmm. And it, I think it's just foolish for any of us to say we know, right? Like to say we know what's helpful with COVID is just foolish. I mean, even the scientists studying this don't fully know and don't have unified opinion, meaning it's a complex thing. And I love this quote about it is for every, I can't remember who said it, but he said, for every complex problem, there's a simple solution and it's always wrong. It's like we make these, like the political sphere, we make these hugely complex issues into simple platforms or policies or whatever the running point is. And that's never the answer. It's never a simple solution. It's very complex. There's a lot of moving parts. And for us to think that one policy will change everything is just wrong. And same with COVID. For us to think that we individually know about this disease more than other people based on what we listen to versus what they listen to, we don't know. We're being fed information. And it's good to be informed, but do we take that information as firsthand or 10th hand? Because it's really 10th hand information. And so that firsthand information of the people that you're interacting with on a human level in daily life is what matters most, right? Is saying, yes, I can be informed on the 10th step or the 10th hand information online and news and all that. And that can shape some of how I think or work through the world for sure. But I want to be firsthand with people that I'm interacting with and making it more human, because on this screen, even right now, we see each other, but we're not in person. It's a different thing. It's not the same as a face-to-face, human-to-human interaction. There's a different level that you get to, and that's always going to be more helpful.
Do you think it's an obsession with that instant gratification, and ultimately, I mean more at a deeper level than likes, comments, shares? Do you think it's people want to have the information, very much like Amazon kind of thing? I want it next day, but obviously in more future sense of as in right here, right now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it. I think the bigger component would probably be control. I think, humans crave for control, and knowledge makes us feel like we're in control. And so this idea, it's a fear-based system, right? It's fear saying what I care about is safety, security, control, and power. And when those are threatened, I'm operating out of fear. And now I need to compete and find a way to beat you, to win, to conquer, so that I don't have to worry about safety, security, and comfort. I'm in control. And I don't believe we're designed or built to operate out of fear. I think fear is designed within us to help us survive. But these are not situations where we need to worry about survival. These are situations where we have different opinions. It's like, okay. So I think operating out of love is saying that I don't need to have fear over whether I have control or not in this situation, because no one has control, right? And by having more information, that doesn't make us more in control. That often makes us more fearful. The more we know, the more we often become fearful because of what could be or what could come of that. And there's a great book by Nassim Taleb, Anti-Fragile. And he does a great job of writing. He's got a handful of books that are all kind of on the lines of, we are horrible at predicting the future. And we think we're actually okay at it. We think we're pretty good at it. And that makes us even worse because we're giving ourselves more confidence than we deserve in that. And his whole point is we need to make ourselves anti-fragile, which means we need to make ourselves, this idea of anti-fragility basically says that when we think of the fragile means you shake a box and the things within it break, right? We think anti-fragile is you shake the box and things just stay the same. Well, that's durable. That's resilient. Anti-fragile is you shake the box and those things actually get better. They benefit from the shaking. And so his whole point, we need to be building within ourselves this anti-fragility that we actually benefit. We get stronger individually when things get shaken and hard. We benefit from chaos because that's a lot of what we're experiencing right now is we're experiencing more chaos than we have before. Our world is getting more shaken up, and it's an opportunity to get stronger. Like, when you're training as an athlete, you try to mix up your regimen. You don't do the same thing every day to get stronger. You want to mix it up and make it more versatile and be good at this situation, this environment, this movement. And that ultimately makes you more stronger. And so I think the same is true in what we're experiencing today.
But how do you bring love and unity into, especially the United States? Because me being mixed race, my father's American and my mother's white. She's the divide worldwide, as it only takes one probably imbecile to create a race war.
Yeah, well, it's true. There's always, I don't have the answer, so I'll just say that. But here's what I'm thinking about with that right now. We can't control, right, when there's one imbecile. And we know that there's always going to be bad actors in any field, in any environment, in any country, in any history. There's always bad actors, just as much as there's good actors. And so we have individually a choice. Go back what you've been talking to a lot. We have a choice to choose how we're going to operate. And love and unity is really important because, it's this idea that I'm a Christian, so that's a lot of what shapes my worldview. And in the Bible, God talks about it as human beings are two things. They're one, created in his image, meaning every human has divine worth and value, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter what you look like, no matter what you do, same divine worth and value. And then two, that we're all sinners, meaning we all fall short, we all mess up, we've all made mistakes. No one's perfect. And so because of those two things, our goal, our benchmark should be to see every single human on the same level. Now, when we get prideful, we put ourselves on a level that's above others. We say, I'm better than, I'm greater than, I am above you. And then when we operate out of shame or guilt, we self-deprecate and we say, I'm horrible, I'm worse than, or even we put other people on pedestals, say they're way better, I want to be like that person, we put them up there. So we're constantly trying to level ourselves with each other in that perspective. And if we can fight for that, that's going to help us a lot in that, in seeing each other as fellow humans on this journey. And we have to recognize and acknowledge the pain and hurt of the past and the things that have been harmful and the things that have devastated communities or people groups. And I love this idea of like recognizing, but not feeling shame for it. Meaning, as a white man, right now in America, it's often that it's easy for white males like me to feel shame over our country's heritage and where we're at now. And while I don't think that's super helpful, because shame usually doesn't keep us moving into action. Usually it makes us feel worse in inaction. And so really, I think as a white male, what I want to say is, while I am not the cause of this problem personally, I didn't cause this, I can be a part of the solution. It's not my individual fault, but it's our collective problem. So how are we collectively going to work on this? And it frees us up to start moving and taking action on that. And so there's different ways that we can think about it. And as long as I think we're not motivated out of shame or guilt for things that we haven't individually done, that will help us take action collectively to solve these problems that we're facing that are real. And educate ourselves. That's a big thing for me. Is this year I've been really striving to educate myself on a better, balanced perspective of history that I wasn't necessarily taught growing up. And I'm about to finish Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is, written in the late 1800s, all about the state of affairs in America at that point and the slavery and the experience of it. That was very, it's incredibly sad, incredibly humbling and eye-opening. And I'm not above that. Meaning if I lived in that time, if I was a part of that culture, I probably would have been in the same place. And we are all products of the culture around us, and I'm not above that. And I wish I could say I was. But my goal is to fight for being above that for sure. And we all have a choice to not let culture dictate who we are, but choose it for ourselves, going back to the choice that you've been talking about.
And I know you and I could probably talk the legs off a donkey in terms of talk probably for hours. So my penultimate question I like to ask all my guests is if you got to sit down with any athlete, dead or alive, who would that be and why?
It's a good question. I would say there's so many. Gosh, that's a tough one to sit down with. But I think when I think about athletes, I think about mainstream, and I think about like secondary tier or more like extreme athletes. I'm really fascinated by the extreme athletes because they usually perform in a space that mistakes cost them their lives. There's a great book, The Rise of Superman by Stephen Kotler on flow. So the mainstream answer would probably be Tiger Woods, just because I'd really be curious, just the holistic approach, not only sports, but also in life, and what he's learned on his journey and through the mistakes he's made and the changes in his person and the pressures he's felt and everything that goes into that. I think in a non-traditional sense, I'm going to cheat and give you two answers. In a non-traditional sense, I would really like to sit down and talk with this guy, Travis Rice, who's arguably the best snowboarder on the planet. This guy has done some of the most, insane, death-defying things on a snowboard. And it'd be fun just to get into his mind state and process of flow that enables him to do some of these incredible things. And that'd just be a blast to talk about.
And my final question before we wrap up the episode, if you had to summarize what we've been speaking about into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
Every day you have a choice, and that choice determines how you're going to live. By taking ownership and never settling, we're able to live lives that matter, not only for ourselves, but for those around us and the world at large.
So once again, Thane, thanks again for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
Thanks, James. This has been a lot of fun.
It's been my absolute pleasure. If you like this episode, please do share it with your friends, and do let Thane and I know what you thought of the episode by tagging us over on Instagram at Thane Marcus. So that's ThaneMarcus, and at the usual at James O Roberts 11. And again, I'll spell out for you. That's JAMES, the letter O, ROBERTS, and the number 11. And again, you can do the same on Twitter and Facebook. And in addition, if you had any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to shoot them over as well. And finally, don't forget to check out Thane's website, thanemarcus.com. So that's ThaneMarcus.com. And as always, don't forget to check out my free content at fitamputee.co.uk and click on the tab resources. But not forgetting, I've also started a new Facebook group, especially for the podcast, which you can find by typing in The Mindset Athlete. All the links will be in the description. You can find all the show notes at mindsetgame.libsyn.com under the category General. So once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Mindset Athlete podcast.